All right, can you hear me okay? Marvelous. Bonjour, hello. Mon nom est Félix Corriveau de la FCM. Je vais être votre maître de cérémonie aujourd'hui. My name is Félix Corriveau and I will be your MC today. Welcome to this press conference by the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM. Thank you for being here in such a large number today. Thank you also for being so mobilized, facing the sword of Damocles hanging over the heads of municipalities and the people who live in those communities because of the U.S. administration's tariff threats. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that we gather here today in Ottawa. The City of Ottawa honors the peoples and land of the Anishinaabe-Algonquin Nation. The City of Ottawa honors all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people and their valuable past and present contributions to this land. This event is organized in the occasion of the meeting of FCM's Big City Mayors Caucus, BCMC. In a few moments, FCM representatives and elected officials will deliver remarks. Rebecca Bligh, President of FCM and Vancouver City Councillor. Josh Morgan, BCMC Chair and Mayor of London. Bruno Marchand, Mayor of Quebec City, Maire de la Ville de Québec. Scott Gillingham, BCMC Vice Chair, Mayor of Winnipeg. Drew Dilkens, Border Mayors Alliance Chair and Mayor of Windsor. And Mark Sutcliffe, Mayor of Ottawa. The question period will begin after the speeches. You will be able to ask one question and one follow-up question. Before asking your question, kindly identify yourself and identify whom the question is directed to as well. La période de questions va débuter après les discours. Avant de poser votre question, bien vouloir vous identifier et dire à qui la question s'adresse. Et vous aurez le droit de poser une question ainsi qu'une question de relance. All good? Rebecca, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Félix. Hello, everyone. Bonjour. Je suis heureuse de vous accueillir pour cette conférence de presse de caucus des maires et mairesses des grandes villes. Today, we can all agree this week's gathering of the Big City Mayors Caucus is coming at an unprecedented time for municipalities. Canadian communities are still living with the threat of a trade war hanging over us, despite the recent delay of tariffs being introduced. U.S. tariffs directly threaten the prosperity and economic health of our communities, who with a myriad of excellent products and high-quality exports have forged great links with our neighbor to the south over many decades. These threaten the stability of our local economies and thus our national economy. Now I'd like to speak to the municipal commitment to Team Canada. Municipalities working closely with federal and provincial governments and building up these relationships with U.S. communities is the key to weathering this storm. With commitment and hard work, we can come out even stronger and more successful than before on both sides of the border. Nevertheless, as frontline leaders, we know communities have the most to lose in the current scenario. And that's why municipalities will be involved through FCM in any discussions regarding tariffs, retaliatory measures, or direct support from federal and provincial governments to businesses and communities. Additionally, retaliatory measures that could affect municipal procurement and strain municipal budgets must be discussed with FCM to ensure they are addressed appropriately. FCM is ready to support these efforts and extends our hand to collaborate with the federal government so that businesses, families, Canadians get the support they need. This is the infrastructure that will support local businesses and populations, help create jobs, and build the cities that residents and entrepreneurs need. This investment in roads, water, and more will boost local companies, improve transport times, and attract enterprise while lowering our exposure to climate change. At a time when we need to come together, strengthening the connective tissue in between our communities simply makes sense. So right now, I will hand it off to Mayor of London and our Big City Mayors Caucus Chair, Josh Morgan. Thank you.
Yes, thank Rebecca, and thanks to everyone for being here. Good afternoon. I think it's afternoon now. Yes, we've had a busy morning. It could be 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Who knows? It's just an honor to be here today to discuss one of the most pressing challenges facing Canadian cities: how to strengthen our economies in the face of shifting global trade policies, including potential tariffs imposed by the U.S. administration. You know, municipalities aren't just service providers, we're economic drivers. The way we spend, invest, and procure goods and services has a direct impact on jobs, local industries, and the long-term resilience of our communities. In London and across Canada, we must seize the moment to rethink our procurement strategies, ensuring that they serve the best interests of residents, businesses, and workers. First, we must prioritize local sourcing of Canadian-made products wherever possible. With billions spent annually on infrastructure, equipment, and services, cities can create demand for Canadian steel, concrete, and technology, boosting and bolstering our domestic industries while reducing our dependence on tariffed imports. Second, we must strengthen regional collaboration. By working with neighboring municipalities and provinces, we can pool our purchasing power, negotiate better deals, and build supply chains that are less vulnerable to foreign policy shifts. Shared procurement agreements can help cities access quality materials at stable prices while keeping investments within our own borders. Third, we need to remove barriers for small and medium-sized businesses so they can adequately compete for contracts, including municipal contracts. These businesses are the backbone of our economy and yet often face complex bidding processes that favor large multinational firms. Simplifying procurement rules, reducing red tape, and creating innovation-friendly policies will ensure Canadian businesses thrive in bidding on municipal projects. And finally, we must embrace value-driven procurement, one that considers long-term economic benefits rather than just the upfront costs, investing in sustainable, locally sourced, and high-quality materials that ensure our products stand the test of time while also supporting the domestic industries and job creation. I want to talk a little bit about my city of London, and like many Canadian cities, you know, we want to try to lead by example. At Municipal Council next week, I will bring forward a motion like many mayors are thinking about bringing forward to look at our procurement policies, to bring together local business leaders, our economic development corporations, those in the manufacturing industry. I'll have a meeting on Friday with key members of my community in those spaces, and we will talk about the potential impacts of tariffs and how they will impact businesses and job creation. Each of us are taking leadership in our individual communities, and each of us are looking at what we can do to be part of the Team Canada approach that Rebecca mentioned. And now, as Big City Mayor Caucus Chair, Rebecca and I will also have the opportunity to engage and have been engaging with our provincial and federal partners on this already. I know I've been in contact regularly with Premier Ford, who chairs the Council of the Federation, and in the delegations that are going on in Washington next week on the 11th and 12th. Rebecca and I, as well as some FCM staff, will be there to join to engage with local lawmakers and decision makers in the U.S., their business counterparts. But as well, we've been engaging with other mayors across the country. I had a recent conversation with Mayor Holt, the mayor of Oklahoma, who is the incoming president of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. I can tell you mayors on both sides of the border understand the impacts that tariffs have in our local communities. On the ground, the businesses in our cities, the people in our cities will be mostly impacted on both sides of the border, and I think mayors on both sides of the border are relatively united in the desire to maintain the current economic relationship, which is the envy of the world. The integrated supply chains, the way that we have worked together across North America is something that has worked well for communities on both sides of the border. And when it is under threat, I think municipal governments and cities have an important role to play in ensuring that we keep those lines of communication open and we speak with one voice in the municipal sector across North America. I want to thank you for coming today, and I have the great pleasure of introducing the Mayor of Quebec City, Bruno Marchand, who will share some words now as well.
Merci beaucoup, Rebecca and Josh. Salutations, Scott, Drew and Mark. Les villes sont impérativement, dans la suite des choses, les locomotives qui peuvent nous aider à poursuivre la croissance économique, à stabiliser s'il en est certains enjeux, mais surtout à s'assurer que les citoyens puissent vivre dans des endroits où ils ne vont pas être mis à risque par des incertitudes économiques qui sont réelles et qui existent déjà et dont on voit les effets. C'est pas faux de dire que la question des chaînes d'approvisionnement, que la question des exportations de nos entreprises, que la question des intégrations de la production de certains produits font en sorte qu'on doit penser et réfléchir à mieux soutenir notre monde économique, nos entreprises, et les villes ont un rôle à jouer. La première des choses, le premier endroit où on peut faire une réelle différence, c'est la question des investissements dans nos infrastructures. C'est nécessairement là un lieu d'une croissance économique qui peut être soutenue et qui peut faire fi des tendances actuelles ou qui peut même nous soustraire de ces tendances actuelles. Lorsqu'on investit dans nos infrastructures, on fait plus que construire des routes. On fait plus que construire des systèmes de transport en commun ou réparer des réseaux techniques urbains ou développer des équipements des équipements publics, pardon. On crée des emplois, on attire des investissements, on stimule les entreprises locales, on développe la compétitivité de nos villes pour être des lieux d'attraction économique pour des entreprises mondiales et internationales. Chaque dollar dépensé dans les infrastructures génère une activité économique qui soutient les industries, allant de la construction à l'innovation, en passant par les hautes technologies et en passant par une multitude de secteurs. Les transports en commun, l'énergie verte, l'infrastructure numérique rendent nos villes évidemment plus attrayantes pour les investisseurs, les entreprises et les talents. C'est ce que les investisseurs mondiaux cherchent. En modernisant nos infrastructures et en le faisant maintenant, on répond à des enjeux réels, à des enjeux d'infrastructure dans nos villes, à faire en sorte de réparer nos villes, notamment en adaptant nos villes au changement climatique, à éviter d'intervenir lorsque c'est la crise. Et on sait que lorsqu'on intervient en situation de crise, ça nous coûte 7 à 10 fois plus cher dans les villes pour réparer ces infrastructures. Il est le temps de le faire et en même temps, on stimule notre économie. On peut même devancer certains de ces investissements-là pour faire en sorte de soutenir nos villes, soutenir notre économie et même gagner de la prospérité. Deuxième élément, en surplus des infrastructures et des investissements qu'on doit faire, deuxième élément d'importance dans la situation, c'est de renforcer la résilience face aux tarifs douaniers et l'incertitude commerciale. Avec raison, et c'est Jean-François Lépine qui utilisait cet exemple-là, diplomate québécois et ancien journaliste à Radio-Canada, nous sommes drogués à l'économie américaine. Nous en sommes dépendants et on doit se sevrer, à tout le moins un minimum. À Québec, par exemple, certaines de nos entreprises exportent pour 70 % de leurs exportations totales aux États-Unis. Évidemment, c'est un partenaire économique qui était important, majeur, avec beaucoup de perspectives. Cependant, on réalise que l'état d'incertitude créé par le président américain crée pour les prochaines années une incertitude dont on doit certainement un peu se soustraire. Ouvrir de nouveaux marchés, ça doit faire partie de nos priorités. Mais faire en sorte, comme ville, qu'on soit un acteur, et Josh l'a bien expliqué et d'autres le feront tout aussi bien, qu'on soit un acteur pour mieux soutenir notre économie locale, c'est fondamental. À Québec, on a décidé depuis plusieurs années de se soustraire notamment des Amazones de ce monde. Nous avons dépensé l'an passé 2 400 $ sur Amazon sur plus de 1 milliard d'achats dans une année. Alors, c'est infime et on continue de s'y soustraire et 2 400 $, c'est encore trop. Alors, on va continuer de s'y soustraire parce que ça fait partie de notre capacité à soutenir le tissu local de nos entreprises, de nos entrepreneurs. Nous en sommes maintenant à 65 % d'approvisionnement locaux. Et on vise à gagner 1 à 2 % de plus chaque année pour les prochaines années et on vise à accélérer. Ça peut paraître banal quand on parle de 1 à 2 %. Là, on parle ici de 14 millions. Chaque fois qu'on gagne 1 % d'investi dans notre économie locale, régionale et canadienne. C'est énorme. Alors, en accélérant les projets d'infrastructure, mais aussi en centrant, parce que les villes dépensent énormément, en centrant dans nos dépenses la priorité sur nos entreprises, ça va faire en sorte de venir compenser certains effets négatifs de la situation que nous vivons. Et on a besoin pour ça de travailler avec les gouvernements pour alléger certaines des bureaucraties, des lois qui nous gouvernent, pour faire en sorte qu'on soit capable d'avoir des approvisionnements qui visent et favorisent le local. En ce sens, on a besoin d'avoir de la prévisibilité. On a besoin de gouvernements qui s'engagent dans la prévisibilité pour faire en sorte que nos infrastructures, on puisse les réparer, les développer et donc soutenir notre économie. Et également, mieux travailler ensemble pour soutenir nos entreprises locales. Et c'est pour ça que la Fédération canadienne des municipalités et les maires ici présents, et j'ai envie de dire tous les maires présents aujourd'hui, plaident en faveur d'un cadre de croissance municipale qui va permettre de mieux utiliser les revenus des taxes existantes. Donc, pas de nouvelles taxes, mais permettre de soutenir nos collectivités en leur fournissant les infrastructures nécessaires, développer la compétitivité de nos villes et faire en sorte qu'on encourage l'économie locale, régionale. C'est fondamental. Pour nous, la voie à suivre est très claire. En investissant aujourd'hui dans les infrastructures municipales, on assure une économie plus forte, plus compétitive, plus résiliente pour demain. La nécessité est mère de l'innovation, dit l'adage. L'heure est venue de donner aux villes les moyens de bâtir le pays quels que soient les défis mondiaux qui se présentent à nous. Je vous remercie énormément et je vous présente le maire de Winnipeg, M. Scott Gillingham, qui prend la parole.
Merci, Maire Marchand. Thank you. Good. There we go. Merci, Maire Marchand. Thank you and good afternoon, everyone. Canada's economy runs through or is centered in our major cities of our nation. And so right now, more than any time, we need to make sure as cities that we're finding ways to accelerate economic growth and to improve our efficiency in delivering services as a city, especially in the face of the potential tariffs from the United States. The global trade environment is shifting, and as city leaders, we cannot afford to be passive observers. The strength of our national economy really does depend upon the success of our cities. We are the engines of growth and innovation and opportunity. And at times, like these times of uncertainty, it is cities, not only the provinces and the federal government, but it is cities that must take action. And my colleagues and I are here, and all those who are part of the Big City Mayor's Caucus are doing just that with the assistance of FCM. Winnipeg, like every major city in Canada, plays a critical role in driving economic progress. We are here to protect jobs and paychecks, and we want to do more as cities to promote jobs and paychecks. The way we invest in our infrastructure, manage our city resources, and engage with businesses determines our ability to compete on the national and global stage. But today we're facing new challenges: rising costs, supply chain disruptions, and the possibility of new trade barriers with our largest trading partner. While we cannot control international trade policies, we can control how we respond. And so to remain competitive, cities must become more efficient, more innovative, and more strategic in the way that we operate, so that we create the environment that promotes and fosters economic growth and greater productivity. We can do this in several ways. First of all, by smarter procurement and supply chain resilience. If indeed the threat of U.S. tariffs materializes, the cost to import materials for infrastructure and projects for cities will continue to rise. One of the things that Winnipeg, as other cities are doing, must prioritize is to look at sourcing locally, finding different Canadian manufacturers, and also building regional supply chains. Winnipeg will also be calling, like many other cities, a special meeting of council in the coming weeks that will give us a chance to hear from our own staff on the economic analysis of the potential of impacts of tariffs and counter tariffs, and also to hear from business leaders. Like many of my colleagues here, I've spoken to many business leaders within Winnipeg in our agriculture, aerospace, and advanced manufacturing sectors. They're very concerned about the impact that any tariff would have on their industry. I've also spoken to U.S. mayors, counterparts. Winnipeg and Minneapolis are sister cities. Just yesterday I spoke to the mayor of Minneapolis about the impact on our shared communities. Both of us really emphasizing the same theme. We share a desire to protect jobs and paychecks in our respective cities, and to protect and enhance and stand for the important integrated trade relationship that we have. And so we as a city in Winnipeg need to look at smarter procurement strategies to reduce our dependency on foreign imports and to keep more of our tax dollars in the local economy. Second of all, we need to look to faster, more responsive government. Businesses can thrive in our cities when our cities operate efficiently and predictably. And so by an ongoing commitment to cut red tape and to streamline permitting processes and embracing digital transformation, we can make it easier for businesses to grow and to invest in our communities. And we need to be a city that moves at the speed of business so that we attract the kind of investment that we need to have a strong local economy. Third, it's about strategic investment in infrastructure. Every dollar that we invest in roads and in public transit and water and wastewater treatment and energy must be spent wisely and open our communities for greater growth and economic prosperity in the future. And fourth, we can diversify and should be diversifying trade and economic partnerships. While the U.S. remains our largest trading partner, we must look at emerging markets as well. Strengthening trade partnerships within Canada, throughout different provinces, and expanding into global markets will make our economy more resilient. We as mayors are fully supportive of the initiative to look at the provinces and the federal government reducing the interprovincial trade barriers to provide more opportunities and more markets for our respective businesses to get their products across Canada into different provinces, into different communities with greater ease. And I know that one of the ones who's on the front lines of this, the tariffs or the threat of tariffs is certainly my colleague here, Drew Dilkens, the Mayor of Windsor, and I'm going to turn it to him at this time.
Thanks very much, Mayor Gillingham, and appreciate that, and all of the remarks from the speakers previously. Today, now more than ever, it really is important that we stand together in lockstep, in unison as a federation of Canadian municipalities, and certainly the Big City Mayor's Caucus is leading that initiative, and we appreciate the support from all of the mayors across the country. As we've experienced in recent days, the situation with President Donald Trump's tariff threats is ever evolving, and it's demanding immediate and unified action from all of us. We must work together to counteract the staggering and looming pressures on our economies, and that's why Canadian mayors in cities and towns like mine across the U.S.-Canada border have united as the Border Mayors Alliance. We're linking arms from coast to coast during this critical time, and together we aim to safeguard our communities, safeguard the paychecks, safeguard the economy. We offer our ground zero perspective from border cities and towns for the national discussion that is well underway. As mayors of border cities and towns, we witness firsthand the interconnected prosperity that our communities contribute to the national economy. Mayors Morgan and Marchand and Gillingham put things into perspective regarding the risks that these tariffs pose on their communities. Well, let me tell you a little bit about the city of Windsor. Windsor is the automobility and automotive capital of Canada. It serves as the proud international gateway between Canada and the U.S. Over $390 million a day in goods cross the Ambassador Bridge. It is the busiest commercial border crossing between the United States and Canada. From auto parts and electronics to greenhouse-grown products from the surrounding region, in fact, just 20 minutes away from the city of Windsor, is the world's second largest greenhouse cluster, only dwarfed by Holland. 85% of the products they produce are exported to the United States. Besides the Ambassador Bridge, we also have the Windsor-Detroit Tunnel connecting our countries, and very soon, later this year, we'll have the opening of the new Gordie Howe International Bridge, which will be the third crossing and likely very quickly to become the busiest commercial crossing between the United States and Canada. The unique proximity of Windsor to the U.S. allows for thousands of residents to cross the border daily. In fact, over 6,000 people live in my community and cross to work in the United States as nurses and doctors and engineers, helping build the U.S. economy each and every day while living in Ontario. There are 8,000 employees in our region's transportation, logistics, and warehousing sector, over 60 transportation service companies, over 20 customs brokerage firms. About 25% of Windsor's workforce is employed in manufacturing, with a significant portion of those working in automotive. Parts cross our border. In the auto sector, that's a great example. In terms of the integration of our economies, it's hard to say that a car is made in either Windsor or Detroit, because the parts that go into that vehicle, regardless of which side of the border it is finished on and rolls off the assembly line on, those parts have crossed the border on average of 6 or 7 times before it rolls off the finish line. And you'll see what this threat could mean for cities like Windsor, cities like London, Quebec City, and Winnipeg. We're not alone. In fact, 35 municipalities across our country have joined forces as the Border Mayors Alliance. We're working with FCM, our partner mayors, the Big City Mayor's Caucus, and we're not trying to, as I say, we're not trying to zig while others are zagging. We want to be supportive. We want to be part of the national dialogue and help lend our relationships that we have with mayors on the other side of the border to amplify their voices, because just as much as we're talking about communities and community impact in Canada and our cities, this impact will be equally as grave on the U.S. side. So how can we amplify the voices of the mayors on the other side of the border that we have relationships with to help join the chorus of those who are saying no to more tariffs? We're working to protect our communities, our people, our interests, and our futures, and certainly we join FCM in calling upon industry leaders, the Canadian government, provincial governments, and our American neighbors to join us in this crucial moment for unity. Canadians are strong and resilient, and it's imperative that we unite now more than ever and that we put Canada first. And before I pass it to Mayor Sutcliffe, let me just say, when we go back, and I remember the conversation in the 1980s with respect to the first free trade agreement, and the thought was things were going to be bad for Canada, that this was going to result in job loss and be a difficult situation for our country. What's happened is exactly the opposite. When the free trade agreement was passed, it grew the economy, it grew the marketplace. economics. The pie grew for everyone. It was good for business and good for families, so much so that we added NAFTA to the equation. We added Mexico to the NAFTA equation and created NAFTA and helped to grow that market. And so this is all about strengthening trade, improving infrastructure across our country, and making sure that we're protecting families and their paychecks here in Canada. Mayor Sutcliffe?
Thank you, Mayor Dilkens. That's a great point. Tout d'abord, je souhaite la bienvenue à mes collègues et je tiens à les remercier pour leur collaboration. Comme mes collègues ont dit, nous faisons face à beaucoup d'incertitudes, beaucoup d'instabilité à ce moment, mais il s'agit d'une menace, mais aussi, j'espère, d'une opportunité. I think we see this all as a threat, but I think it can also be an opportunity. Here in Ottawa, we are already facing significant uncertainty about the local economy because of the prospect of federal government job reductions. That's already started and could continue under a new government sometime this year. We also, unlike Drew, who is the mayor of a border city between Canada and the U.S., where Ottawa is a border city on the border between Ontario and Quebec. Et je suis très heureux que j'ai parlé souvent avec, je parle souvent avec mon collègue, la mairesse de Gatineau, Maude Marquis-Bissonnette. I've had the opportunity to speak often with Maude Marquis-Bissonnette, the mairess of Gatineau, on the need for us to remove interprovincial trade barriers throughout the country, but in particular between Ontario and Quebec, because here in Ottawa-Gatineau, that has an impact on our economy. I've heard from local business owners in our city that on occasion they have found it easier to do business with companies in the United States or sell their products in the United States than to sell their products in Manitoba or Quebec. So again, that's a situation where maybe that's an opportunity because of the crisis that we are facing, that we can make some progress on eliminating or reducing interprovincial trade barriers between our provinces. Here in Ottawa, I think as well, we need to make it easier for people to do business by removing barriers, by streamlining our processes. We have introduced a red tape reduction committee at the city. We have to continue to invest in our city. I want to send a strong signal to the community that the city spends money. We invest in infrastructure. We're intending to build roads and sidewalks and community centers over the course of next year, and those investments will continue. It's vitally important that we continue to invest in our local economy. And we're going to, like my colleagues have spoken of, we are going to look at how we can review all of our procurement practices and make sure that wherever possible we are buying local and we are buying Canadian. So again, I think this is a time for all of us to be working together. The timing of this meeting is fortuitous. We need to see help from other levels of government as well, collaboration from other levels of government. We need to see investments being made in cities more than ever to strengthen our local economies, to support local business, and to make sure that everyone is able to survive this crisis. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you all. Okay, let's switch to questions again. Let's keep it civilized. Give your name first, then your outlet. Vous vous nommez en premier. CBC Nicole.
Thanks very much. It is a very important trip, and we're at FCM, of course, at the table in the United Team Canada approach, and so we're grateful to be included in the delegation of the Council of the Federation. Our priority at FCM is really to defend Canadians' rights and to protect local economies. As we know, the destabilization of our national economy trickles down to the local level. Municipalities and local governments are at the front lines to respond to these crises. So our intention is to join the delegation and ensure that we can reflect the importance of taking these tariffs seriously and how they can negatively impact not just Canadians, but also Americans as well. Also leveraging our existing relationships with the mayors across the U.S. We have built bridges and will continue to leverage those relationships with our U.S. counterparts, the National League of Cities and the U.S. Conference of Mayors as two entities that we have already engaged with, we're having conversations with, and they have invited us also throughout the spring to a number of different meetings in order to partner on policy, because there is a shared understanding that this is not only harmful to Canadian municipalities, this can be very harmful to U.S. municipalities, and there is an appetite there, I can say, based on conversations I've had, to ensure that we leverage this Team Canada United Front approach to this crisis, potential crisis, with the U.S. counterparts that we already have relationships with. And I know Chair Morgan will also have something to say.
Yeah, so I think the delegation is really important. It'll be myself, Rebecca, FCM President, our CEO, Carol Saab, as well as some support staff joining. There's going to be a number of things happening in Washington. We know that the premiers and the Council of Federation have meetings. We also know that there's engagements with senators, congressmen, elected officials, and leaders in U.S. business, and there will be the opportunity to engage with a number of them. As Rebecca said, we also have strong connections with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National League of Cities, and that gives us the opportunity to leverage our relationship with U.S. mayors to engage in that case. I've also been in contact myself with David Patterson, who represents the Premier in Ontario in Washington, to talk about the on-the-ground work that they've already been doing and laying with elected officials there. So, I guess the question is, why would cities go to this, right? Well, cities are a really critical component of a Team Canada approach, right? We know that the talk of tariffs and trade disruptions really hits the ground, as you've heard from my colleagues today, really hits the ground in cities. It's the businesses in the cities, the employment in the cities that matter, and we can arm the Team Canada approach with real on-the-ground examples of how tariffs will hurt our local economy. We can real on-the-world and on-the-ground examples of how trade has been very beneficial to our communities and how integrated a number of our communities are within a supply chain network across North America. Our connections with mayors, I think, is really critical too, because I think mayors on both sides of the border are thinking the same things. We see the on-the-ground impacts to these, and we have a really critical voice to play. But I'll be very clear, we're not looking to step on toes here. We're part of a Team Canada approach. We're there in a supportive role. We understand the important role that the premiers and the federal governments play in this discussion, and we're there to support as best possible, but also foster and continue to foster relationships with American mayors and elected officials who are an important and growing voice. As Rebecca said, we have other opportunities and have been invited by those groups to participate in their conferences and their engagements on this issue. We've also invited them to participate in the work that FCM is doing over the next little while to come here. I think that, as Mayor Sutcliffe said, crises can be opportunities, and the opportunity not only to form stronger unity within Canada, but stronger unity across cities across North America, I think is a real opportunity that we're seizing as well.
Follow up?
Yeah, I'll start that, and then I know I would say pretty much every mayor on this table has probably had a direct conversation with another mayor about the integrated supply chain. But let me talk just a little bit about the engagements I've had, and then I'll let anybody else who wants to jump in. What we're hearing from mayors is they actually understand the integrated economy. You think about just Canadian chlorine, right? One of the most basic services a municipality supplies is clean drinking water to their populations. And yet we're on the verge of starting to tariff things that are basic responsibilities of local and municipal governments, right? In my community, we have businesses that are situated here in Canada who are looking to supply medical equipment, processed food. We have Trojans Technologies, which does UV filtration that many municipalities have adopted in the U.S. We have been able to create this opportunity to work together to create products that flow back and forth across the border in a way that has benefited municipal governments. So they get that. But the other thing that we have in common with American mayors is when there is a trade war, everybody pays more, right? And where that hits the ground is in cities, in communities, in municipalities. That's where people are struggling to make ends meet. That's where people feel the pinch when they go out and buy things. That's where they come to their municipal governments to say, we need help, we need assistance, we're struggling. When you talk about housing affordability, cost of living, all of these things are things that we have been talking about as municipalities for years and working with provincial and federal partners. This will only get worse with an expanding trade dispute. And so we understand the real consequences of trade barriers, both mayors here and mayors in the U.S. We are facing common challenges. We are working towards common solutions. And I think we're both asking our respective governments for the same types of things at a basic level. Support the innovation and the on-the-ground work that cities and municipalities can do, and please try to avoid putting more pressure on those communities through a high-level trade dispute that really only damages businesses and citizens across North America, right? Looking outside in, this is an economic relationship that is the envy of the world. And to try to take a step back to dismantle that or do damage to it, I think the rest of the world could be just sitting back and laughing at us because we've built something incredibly special here that is highly effective, and we should be fostering and growing it, not doing damage to it.
I want to give a chance to everyone to ask a question. So you lady, name and outlet, please.
Hello, Natalie Van Roy with CTV. This question is for Mayor Mark Sutcliffe. Mayor, what are the specific steps that are needed to remove barriers for interprovincial trade between provinces and Quebec?
Thanks for the question, Natalie. I think, first of all, we have to understand the barriers that are having the greatest impact and are standing in the way of companies doing business with each other across the Ontario-Quebec border and throughout Canada. So we need to listen to business owners and understand what they're experiencing. And then we have to work with the other levels of government to remove those barriers. There are reasons why some of these barriers were put in place, and my colleague from Gatineau has pointed this out. There are some that still need to be there for various reasons. But I think if we're not going to have as much free trade with the United States going forward, that seems to be the reality we might be facing, then we need to have more free trade within Canada, and here in the National Capital Region in particular. We need to see the opportunity for companies to do business with each other when they're only a few kilometers away from each other across the river. So the Mayoress and I are going to write a letter together to the Premiers of Ontario and Quebec and to the federal government to ask for their help on this.
Would that be negotiated based on industry?
I don't know exactly how that would look, but we have to look at them one by one, understand, I think we have to start with figuring out where we can have the greatest impact. What are the barriers that are causing the most, they're creating the most obstacles for businesses on both sides of the river? We'll start there and work our way down the list.
Thank you. You?
Victoria is Reasonable News. This is for Mayor Dilkens, but other mayors can answer. Can you discuss how the current uncertainty is affecting business in your city? Have operations wound down? Are you seeing businesses close?
No, we haven't seen any businesses close, and I wouldn't say anything's winding down, but I think it's fair to say we are seeing a high period of growth in our community right now, fueled by the construction of the Gordie Howe Bridge, fueled by Canada's first electric vehicle battery factory. That $6 billion investment has a whole supply chain that's building up in proximity to it. And so that hasn't stopped in the last couple of weeks, but I can tell you that there are businesses that we're working with who are parking the capital waiting to see what happens here. What is the outcome? When will certainty be provided in terms of this conversation and the tariff outlook before they actually move forward? And so nothing's closed down, but we're stopping investment that I think is really, really important. And it's not that the United States is repatriating that. That these folks aren't saying, okay, we're going to place the money in the United States right now. They're waiting to see what the landscape looks like before they actually park their money and make the investment and create the jobs. And so it behooves us to, work very diligently to resolve any of these issues, to provide the certainty for the business, to provide the certainty for the families in our communities who are also not booking the vacations, starting to save money, not spending as much as they would. At least that's what's happening in my community because they don't know what the future looks like yet, and they want to make sure that they have some pennies in the bank in the event that a 25% tariff is deployed by the president.
And my second question is for Mr. Marchand. Several polls have recently come out that suggest pride in Canada has increased in Quebec. So I just wonder what you make of that.
I think it's the normal reaction about feeling that you have to gather in order to find solutions. And this is probably the only way to succeed. If we I would say, accelerate the division between us, between cities, between provinces, between ideas, we won't succeed at all. So we need to gather, we need to be together, we need to be shoulder to shoulder in order to face the challenges we're facing, and that's the only way to succeed.
Thank you.
Anaïs Michel pour Radio-Canada. Je vois qu'il y avait des mots qui reviennent beaucoup dans vos discours. On parle de réduire la dépendance avec les États-Unis, réduire ce red tape, la bureaucratie au niveau canadien, d'acheter local, d'acheter canadien. Mais je me demande juste, là vous vous êtes réunis, est-ce qu'il y a une de ces barrières économiques qui est commune à toutes les villes et qui devient une priorité? Et si oui, est-ce que vous en avez un exemple concret?
Une barrière économique, vous voulez dire une barrière économique qui existe au Canada?
Oui, qui serait commune à toutes les villes aujourd'hui. Est-ce que vous en avez identifié une pour faire du cas par cas?
Bien, l'exemple de Mayor Dilkens est totalement différent de Québec parce que son économie, pour des raisons, il l'a bien expliqué, pour des raisons du type d'économie dans lequel il est, a des réalités complètement différentes. Au final, on vit quand même la même chose. Quand une entreprise de chez nous en bois d'œuvre, quand une entreprise de chez nous en meubles, quand une entreprise de chez nous qui exporte son savoir ou sa technologie vers les États-Unis vit à 70% de ses exportations, elle vit la même réalité qu'une entreprise de l'automobile du marché de Windsor ou de Winnipeg ou d'ailleurs. Alors, il n'y a pas une réalité similaire parce qu'on n'exporte pas les mêmes choses et parce que nos liens ne sont pas exactement vers les mêmes États ou les mêmes entreprises ou les mêmes types d'entreprises. Cependant, ce qu'on réalise, et dans certains cas, c'est impossible de se défaire de la dépendance aux États-Unis. Les États-Unis restent un joueur majeur économiquement duquel ce sera toujours à la fois très tentant et à la fois très intéressant de faire affaire. Mais on est capable d'ouvrir des marchés, et ça a été très bien dit, entre les provinces, des marchés qui vont être bénéfiques aux Canadiens et aux gens des villes, mais aussi avec d'autres pays, pour faire en sorte que, je vous donne l'exemple, beaucoup d'entreprises chez nous sont à 70% dépendants de l'exportation américaine. Si on descend ça à 65, 60, 58, 57, 56, ça va prendre des années à y arriver. On va être beaucoup moins victime des incertitudes d'un président qui, selon un tweet ou selon comment il se lève, est capable de venir créer de l'incertitude. Tantôt, on donnait des exemples. Il y a un commerce de fruits et de légumes qui dessert au Québec beaucoup de fruiteries et de commerce de légumes, qui a annulé des commandes valant des millions aux États-Unis. Bien, les commandes pour ces entreprises californiennes qui ont été annulées, là, quand tantôt M. Morgan disait que ça a de l'impact pour des entreprises aux États-Unis, c'est aussi ça. C'est que devant l'incertitude, il ne peut pas payer 25 de frais sur des tarifications qu'il va devoir passer aux commerçants, il a peur aux citoyens, il a peur de ne pas pouvoir les vendre. Qu'est-ce qu'il fait? Il annule ses commandes, tout le monde y perd.
Peut-être pour le maire Sutcliffe, on parle de dépendance avec les États-Unis. Pourquoi on en est arrivé à un point pareil de cette dépendance-là? Comment on a fait pour que nos villes, nos provinces soient si dépendantes de nos voisins du Sud?
Mais alors, c'est l'économie la plus importante du monde. Alors, ce n'est pas une surprise que les entreprises au Canada sont beaucoup de clients aux États-Unis. Pour les entreprises de la secteur technologique ici à Ottawa, beaucoup de leurs clients sont aux États-Unis. Alors, ce n'est pas une surprise, mais j'espère que avec beaucoup de travail, il y aura des opportunités partout au monde, et ici au Canada, pour toutes les entreprises canadiennes qui peut-être vont perdre leurs clients aux États-Unis.
Thank you. We only have a few minutes left, so let's be efficient here. Journal de Québec.
Bonjour, Fayette Morin, Journal de Québec. Je me demandais, je lis dans le communiqué, vous avez rencontré M. Trudeau aujourd'hui, si je comprends bien. Quel a été le message? Ah, pas encore. D'accord, alors vous allez le rencontrer, si je comprends bien. Quel est le principal message que vous voulez diriger vers le fédéral? Ça serait quoi la priorité en ce moment?
Pour le faire.
Et en sous-question, je comprends qu'il y a diverses missions là, pour Washington et vos discussions préliminaires, corrigez-moi si je me trompe, avec vos vis-à-vis, les maires des autres villes américaines semblent plutôt d'accord avec vous, là, parce que j'ai l'impression qu'ils ne comprennent pas non plus cette histoire de tarifs douaniers. Est-ce que ce ne serait pas plus efficace dans ces rencontres-là de demander à rencontrer le principal intéressé qui est Donald Trump?
Alors, pour parler aux officiers et aux officines américaines qui vont prendre les décisions, on a beaucoup plus de chances si c'est des maires des grandes villes américaines, si c'est des acteurs avec qui on parle, si c'est des entrepreneurs, de le convaincre que ce soit des maires canadiens. Ça dit en tout respect pour l'extraordinaire éloquence et l'extraordinaire capacité des maires canadiens, c'est mieux qu'un Américain parle à un Américain pour le convaincre.
OK. Miss at the back. Yeah.
On m'a dit ça de CEPAC. Cette question est pour le maire Marchand. Vous avez plaidé en faveur d'investissement dans les économies locales. Vous avez parlé d'un cadre. Je vais juste préciser votre pensée sur cette question-là.
Vous voulez d'un cadre...
Un cadre des dépenses locales.
D'abord, comme ville, on a des choix à faire pour faire en sorte d'aider nos entreprises locales. Et c'est pas vrai que c'était naturellement comme ça. Alors, il y a des choix qu'on doit faire. À Québec, on les a faits. Et je vous ai donné l'exemple d'Amazon. C'est un exemple qui est très probant. On a arrêté d'acheter sur Amazon. Il reste 2400 $ sur plus d'1 milliard de dépenses. C'est une façon, avec un paquet d'autres méthodes dont je pourrais vous parler, qu'on fait en sorte d'aider nos entreprises locales à postuler sur des contrats et à les obtenir, à avoir plus de chances de les obtenir. Mais on pourrait aussi, avec le soutien des gouvernements supérieurs, modifier certaines lois qui nous obligent, par exemple, à prendre parfois les plus bas soumissionnaires et qui nous obligent parfois à faire face à des entreprises ou à choisir des entreprises qui ne sont pas des entreprises qui viennent d'ici. Et ça pourrait aider aussi nos entreprises locales à avoir des processus d'approvisionnement qui sont plus agiles et qui permettent de soutenir encore plus l'économie locale.
Okay, you, sir. 2 last questions. You, sir, and then you.
Any countermeasures affecting municipalities must be cost neutral and develop a consultation with CM. Can you elaborate on what exactly means by cost neutral?
Yeah, we are at SCM. We are engaging with our member municipalities. We're seeing a strong sort of rising up of municipalities, looking at all of the different ways that collectively, with their buying power, they are able to support Canadian businesses, local economy. With a Buy Canada approach. And so on the sort of flip side is that we have to also recognize that retaliatory tariffs or any measures to sort of counter these threats need to be certain that municipalities remain whole, so to speak, with their budgets, because we know that municipalities are already running a very tight budget. They're at the frontline services, responding to homelessness, responding to housing, infrastructure deficits, you name it. Food bank programs, everything is oversubscribed at the moment, and now layering on this economic instability. We're at FCM, of course, on behalf of all of our members, ensuring that we're at the table to negotiate with the very strong partnerships that we have with the federal and provincial governments to ensure that municipalities' priorities and their financial constraints are reflected and accounted for in whatever those outcomes look like.
So you're looking for the federal government to transfer money to municipalities if they impose countermeasures?
I think what we're really looking at right now, I mean, we have a broader advocacy priority, which is the municipal growth framework, which really does separate, and long before these tariffs became a topic of conversation, was a priority of FCM, which is to provide a more consistent stream of revenue to municipalities in order to fund renewal of infrastructure to build communities that are able to thrive in the long term. That is already a priority. What we're talking about is ensuring that whether it's, as I say, local procurement or other strategies related to responding directly to the tariffs in those negotiations, that municipalities' best interests are at the foreground.
Last question.
Bonjour, maintenant pour la journée madame, monsieur le maire, j'ai des questions de la part de mes collègues de Québec pour vous. Est-ce que vous avez passé votre conseiller et pourquoi?
Non, non, pas du tout. Non. Alors, non, c'est sa décision personnelle qu'il m'avait communiquée. Il a décidé de devancer la communication de cette décision-là, puis il a expliqué ce matin pourquoi, mais c'est un conseiller qui a été extraordinaire pour la ville, qui a tout donné et qui nous a aidés à transformer cette ville et à l'améliorer.
Il y a la citoyenne, madame Bligh, qui demande de vous rencontrer en personne pour elle vous expliquer
Alors, je lui ai proposé de lui parler ce matin. Elle a souhaité pas me parler. Alors, c'est ainsi.
All right, thank you. Last comment, Mayor Morgan.
Let me just wrap by thanking our president and my mayoral colleagues for their advocacy and their work. We're gathered here as a larger group than just you see here because we know that it's important for us to work together. Mayors, municipal councillors, those who serve in local government, we go to the grocery store. You know, we get gas at the gas station. You know, we get coffee at Tim Hortons. We actually hear people's worry and concern on the ground in our communities. And our message for Canadians is that we have your back. We know the concerns, we hear your voice, and we will partner with the provincial and federal governments to do what we can as cities to ensure that voice is heard, that jobs are protected, and that businesses will thrive in this country. And that's what we're here doing together, and that's what we'll continue to do in partnership as a united Team Canada approach. Thanks so much for sharing your time with us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan. Thank you to all of you. Ça conclut notre conférence de presse aujourd'hui. Thank you very much.